first of all, it's a freaking sexy word. I mean, cytokine storm, baby. Cytokine. It kind of reminds me of a Marvel superhero. Cytokine storm, like Thor or Captain America. He's oddly sexy, mysterious, kind of dangerous, bad boy. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Duc Vuong. I'm a world famous bariatric surgeon, author of 13 books. It's true. I have my diploma on display in case you're new to me, just so you know where your information is coming from. That's a med school diploma. And I'm a surgeon by trade, bariatric surgeon. So here's my certificate, my diploma from surgical residency. Now you know my middle name. In case you're new to me or someone shared this video or tagged it to you, now you know who you're getting your information from. I've been talking about coronavirus since the World Health Organization declared it a pandemic in March 11th. And when I started looking at that on March 12th, at that time, the United States had 1,600 coronavirus cases, and everyone thought it was a joke. Today is April 7th, so we're almost into a month into this. And the United States alone is at 395,000 cases. The world is at over 1.3 million and over 81,000 deaths worldwide. In the United States, we are now up to 12,786 deaths, 12,700 deaths. And that number is going to increase. We are going to get worse and worse. Now, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to just give you the facts. So today's video, we're going to talk about cytokine storm. I think we're getting to the point where people are starting to take this seriously, this coronavirus seriously. Remember, even the typical influenza, your seasonal flu, has a death rate of about 0.1%, and the worldwide death rate for the coronavirus is about 4%. Italy is about 13%, but at one point Italy was 10%, right, death rate. So that's 100 times more powerful, more deadly. Yeah, even with the death rate in the United States at the time of 1%, that was 10 times more deadly than seasonal flu. And now we are, as a state, around almost 3%. New York State is 3% death rate currently, 3.2, something like that. And the numbers are going to get worse. Now, it doesn't matter if you believe that our numbers are inaccurate because we don't have enough testing, or you think we have too many numbers because we are testing more than anybody else. I don't care what you believe. What I'm talking about is the trend. The trend is currently going up. And if the trend is going up, you would think the death rate would go down, but the death rate's also going up, and it's going up faster. So if the death rate was going up as fast as if the number of deaths was going up at the same rate as the number of cases being diagnosed, the death rate should stay the same, but it's not. In the United States, it went from 1% and now it's 3%. So what does that mean? That means we have a lag time with the deaths, and what I've been saying for the last 2 weeks is starting to come true. The people on the ventilators are starting to die. And that was made very apparent in my interview on Sunday with Dr. Gordon, who is a surgeon taking care of patients in New York. So you need to check out that video for me. So today I want to talk a little bit about cytokine storm and what that really means. And because, it's such a sexy, right? Sexy word, cytokine storm. It's like Ryan Gosling. It's kind of sexy in a weird way. And I want to kind of talk about it, debunk it, and kind of explain to you what it really, really is. Then I'd also, while I have your attention, like to talk about where I'm going with this broadcast. A lot of people are confused. They're just like, hey, you're a bariatric surgeon. What do you know about coronavirus? You're not an epidemiologist. You're not an infectious disease expert. Why should we listen to you? Well, the reason why you should listen to me and the reason why I'm doing this is because what do you think is currently the number one risk factor for poor outcomes with coronavirus? By poor outcomes, I mean you die. You die. What is the number one risk factor for poor outcomes with coronavirus? And the answer is not age, not high blood pressure, not diabetes, not old people, not smokers. In the United States, it's actually morbid obesity. and that's my following, and that's why I'm doing these broadcasts. So my morbid obesity, my patients are at their greatest risk. My following is at their greatest risk. Do most people get over this? Yes, 80% will. 20% will need some sort of higher level care. And by that, we mean you need hospitalization. And do patients get off the vent? Yes, of course. But the vast majority of them will die on the vent. And who's dying? The morbidly obese, the elderly, and people with previous lung issues, lung diseases. If you have 3 comorbidities, your chance of dying from once you're on the ventilator is very high. So what we want to do is keep you off the ventilator, right? We got to keep you off of this process. So a lot has been changing over the last week. So that's why I'm here doing pretty much a coronavirus update every single day to try to explain it to you in ways you can understand. And one of the things that's going to happen is we're starting to see different phases of this coronavirus infection. So for the non-believers, for the idiots, for the as Dr. Vuong calls them, the dickheads, who think that this is just hype and that it's just like the flu. It's not like the flu, because typically for the flu, you catch the flu. You have fever, body aches, you feel like crap, and then you stay at home, you rest, you get better after a few days. So what's starting to emerge is that we are starting to see different phases of coronavirus infection. And these different phases, and you're going to start hearing about this, okay? These different phases require different type of treatments. So the first phase is obviously kind of mild symptoms, feeling bad, fever, chills, body aches, back aches, and then there are odd new ones like loss of sense of smell and taste. Comes much later. But there's one way to treat those patients, right? And then there becomes respiratory distress where you're having trouble breathing. You need to get in like early hospitalization, and then early respiratory support, and then early ventilation, and then late ventilation. What are we doing? Those require different types of treatments. And that's not this video, but what I'm going to talk about in this video has to do with that. All right. So if this has been helpful so far, hit share for me right now. We need to get 1,000 people on this video because I want to explain Cytokine Storm for you right now, right? And I appreciate you for hitting share. It really means a lot to me because if you hit share, we could save a life, and that life could be your son or your daughter's life or your mother's life or your grandmother's life. Because here's the truth. One truth is this. Like, they're not allowing visitors into the hospitals anymore. And I said that a week and a half ago. And I told you 2 weeks ago you were going to have pop-up tents that were going to come up as temporary places to process patients. Now, comment if you've already started seeing pop-up tents for corona suspected people. I mean, that's happening. I told you a long time ago they were going to cancel elective cases, and they've done that. So now you're seeing pop-up tents. And comment right now, and I told you last week they were going to stop allowing visitors in. Comment if that's happened in your city. You're no longer allowing visitors in. Now, why is that important? That's important because your loved one who has contracted this is going to be placed in COVID isolation, and they're not going to be allowed visitors. And for the most part, many hospitals have actually stopped allowing visitors in. Why? Because it's highly contagious. It's much more contagious than regular flu. And it has a much higher morbidity rate. And yes, it's not absolutely accurate. 4% seems to be the number. It could be lower. Yes, I get that. You don't have to be a smartass. But it's much, much higher than the regular flu. And so we want to keep you safe, but we also want to keep you from spreading it. But here's my point of telling you this. There won't be more visitors. They're starting to turn hospital lobbies into hospital rooms. They're starting to turn waiting rooms into hospital rooms. They've turned the PACU, that's this post-anesthesia recovery unit after you've had surgery, they're turning PACUs into ICUs. They're turning entire hospital floors into COVID. And actually some hospitals have started changing the entire hospital is now one big COVID hospital, not a COVID floor. So why is this important for you to understand with Cytokine Storm? Now this goes back, back to what I was, I'm sorry, I didn't finish my thought. So why is this important you understand this? Because when your loved one gets sick, and God forbid they don't recover, they need respiratory support, the doctors are going to put a breathing tube into them. We're worried that mom's going to tire out. First of all, you're just going to drop mom off, and mom's going to get escorted in and suited up, or if you're lucky, they'll let one of y'all suit up and let you come in and help mom out. But then you got to go home. You got to get your ass home. You're not going to linger around, drink a cup of coffee. There are no more cafeterias. There's no vending machines, because those are all contact things that you can spread virus. They've shut all that shit down, okay? So then mom's going to get admitted to the hospital, and she's going to be watched and tests run and all this stuff, right? And then what will happen? Well, they're going to help her as much as possible. And a certain number of them will get better, but a lot of them will start having respiratory distress. Then they'll have to have a breathing tube, right? We're worried your mom's going to tire out and she'll need a breathing tube. In which case, at that point, she'll be in ICU, or probably even before that. She'll be sedated. So I get a lot of questions like that. Dr. V, what happens when they put the breathing tube in you? So you're sedated to keep you very, very comfortable. And in fact, a concerning thing right now is that we're starting to run out of sedation. We're starting to run out of the medicines that keep, like propofol, that keep you sedated. But either way, you have to be really comfortable. And then the doctors will start managing the vent. And yes, there are people who get off the vent. But for the vast majority, a large part of them won't get off the vent. And those are the ones with those comorbidities I was talking about. Morbid obesity is your number one. Advanced age, high blood pressure, previous lung disease, lung resection, COPD. There are people with previous H1N1 infections who have terrible lung disease. Smoking is super high. So if you have a combination of three of those, you are at super high risk for bad outcomes. Okay, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Bad outcomes means you're going to die. So yes, there are people who survive. And yes, some of y'all want to post about people who survive and get off the vent and leave the hospital. Good for you. My goal is to make sure you don't even get your ass in the hospital. You stay safe. That's what we're after. So after this sort of broadcast, since most people are starting to understand that this is our new normal, we're going to have to do social isolation. We're going to have to stay at home. They're shutting down states. You can bitch and moan, complain all you want. This is just a reality, and we're going to start to live with this, all right? So now that I feel like we're starting to understand that this is a new reality, we're accepting it. Okay, there are a few non-believers. There are a few people who are going to be assholes. I get that. But for the most part, most of us are. Then we're going to start switching to edutainment. By that I mean so you're not going to work. Most of you aren't watching TV. You turn off the news because it's all drama, that sort of stuff. Then what I want to do is start changing to edutainment. So I'm going to educate you, entertain you. So educate you about coronavirus and what's happening, medical lingo, try to break it down for you. But I will also have guests on who are in the medical field, but who's also not. Like I have I've reached out to some celebrity guests who are really interested by this, who've been impacted by this. And we can interview them and kind of talk about normalcy. What's life really like for them? And hopefully give you some entertainment as well as education, and to get us through this period, because we are going to be at home for several more months. You guys understand that, right? This is not ending April 30th. I don't care what the president says. It's not ending April 30th. Is it as long or as bad as August or July? I'm not sure. But we're in this for the next few weeks. Make sense, y'all? So that's the goal here. So stay with me. So for those of you who didn't like my fear-mongering tone, or he's just trying to get likes, all right, fuck you, I don't care. I had to do that, and it was real because people were still walking around not ignoring this, ignoring mandates, etc., thinking this was silly. So now I think we've done a good job. We're getting there. The numbers are starting to get better. So we're going to shift the focus to edutainment, educating you guys, but also entertaining you guys so that we can stay safe and get through this together. Because it is true, stress lowers your immune response. Positivity increases your immune response. Laughter increases your immune response. And that's what we need now. Now that we have been on alert, now that we're starting to accept this as a new normal, now let's inform us with real information. So what you can do right now is share this video, because this video marks the transition that Dr. V is making. Mark my word. This is the transition from hard, tough, pounding Dr. V to, okay, let's calm down. We're doing good. Let's keep at it. Let's not give up. Let's not get frustrated. This is the raw talk, right? We're making a change in the trajectory. We're starting to see a difference. Now there's going to be a lag time in the deaths, so the deaths are going to increase. Number of cases are going to increase, but at a much slower rate. We're doing good. We need to stay on course. We do not need to get frustrated. So that's how I'm going to change. Now, if that's for you, I hope you'll keep following me. If it's not for you, if you want fear mongering and scaring, I'm sorry. It's not time for that anymore. It's time that we stay united and that we stay consistent in doing what's been working for the last couple of weeks. Thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up. Give me some hearts if you really think you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, awesome. So Cytokine Storm, what is it? First of all, it's a freaking sexy word. I mean, Cytokine Storm, baby. Cytokine. It kind of reminds me of a Marvel superhero. Cytokine Storm, like Thor or Captain America. He's oddly sexy, mysterious, kind of dangerous, bad boy. Cytokine Storm. Cytokines are just basically regulation, communication proteins. They're small proteins that our cells in our bodies use to talk to each other, to regulate responses, right? It's like a telegraph. Have you ever, when you were little, one of my favorite plays is Our Town, and with George, and when you were little, you ever cut out those aluminum cans and you put a string and then you tie it to your friend's aluminum can and you guys pass it across the alleyway to each other's window, or you stood on one side of the house and the other side of the house and you could listen, you could talk on one side and you could listen, you could hear the other person talk? Well, that's kind of like a cytokine storm. By that I mean that's how these cells talk to each other, is via cytokines. So what are cytokines? Cytokines is a class of proteins that help our cells communicate. And unfortunately, they happen during times of attack. So viruses. So remember when we used to play like Cowboys and Indians or military or army, and we wanted to talk to each other, we have these little cans and we talk across each other. Hey, the enemy's attacking, build up your shelter on this side and that side. Well, that's what cytokines do for us. That makes the cells talk to each other. I'll give you another example, maybe more professional. Have you ever cut your hand or cut your finger or had an issue? Paper cut? Fucking paper cut? That's the worst. Paper cut! That's the most painful cut ever! So have you ever had a paper cut or anything like that? Have you ever noticed the cut gets red and starts to swell? And if you're quiet long enough after you've started crying, you stop crying. You know who you are, you big babies. You stop crying. And you can kind of feel a throbbing, like your finger's throbbing. It's throbbing. And then if you wait long enough, it gets hot. It gets hot and it's throbbing. Well, that's inflammation. And that inflammation is caused by cytokines. The cytokines come, this will all be relevant, trust me, to COVID. So the cytokines come and they said, oh shit, dude, you cut your finger, man. We got to call in the backup. We got to call in the macrophages that will attack the bacteria because you cut an opening here, man. And so bacteria is going to get in there. So let's call in the macrophages and call in the neutrophils and so they can clean this shit up. And so to do that, heat, fever, temperature, right, is a result. Swelling is a result because the vessels get leaky. Now I want you to pay attention to that because the blood vessels, we always talk about, the bodybuilders, the big blood vessels when they engorge their biceps, but they're actually like tiny. Blood vessels are tiny, tiny, because so the big arteries get smaller and smaller and smaller until you have microscopic, skinny blood vessels that deliver oxygen and blood and stuff to your cells. So that's microscopic level, tiny, tiny, tiny. So those tiny vessels get leaky, and so they let fluid out. Well, you want them to let fluid out because that's how the cytokines get there, and the scavenger cells, and the killer cells and stuff like that. Macrophages come and rescue our infection and start the healing process. Okay, so if you've ever cut your finger, you understand cytokines now. So that's nice, Dr. Vuong, but let's get to the superhero Marvel shit, right? Tell me about Cytokine Storm, Dr. Vuong. I'm in for some Storm. She was hot, right? So she's a hot X-Men. Well, it's not quite the same Storm as X-Men Storm. This happens when your body, for some reason, produces an excessive amount of cytokines. Oh, so these cytokines is a class of family called, and there's several of them, interleukins. It's not important you know these. Interleukins, interferons, right? Tumor necrosis factor, to name a few, and this class of storm, they all act together to have this response. Chemokines, colony stimulating factors, not super important, you remember that. Now the ones that are important are the interferons, seem to be important, and the tumor necrosis factors. Those are the tumor necrosis alpha that you hear about, TNF alpha, interleukin 1B, stuff like that. So they're all called cytokines. So cytokine storm is basically what happens when your body has too much of a release of cytokines. We'll get into a second why this happens, but just imagine it's too big of a surge, too much, like, ooh, this one goes up to 11, So why does that happen? We'll talk about that in a second. But cytokine storm, the first time that if you do a medical literature search that we think it appeared was in something called host versus graft disease. That's where, and I don't know the exact surgery, but it's where you put an artificial organ or device or something into your body, and it causes this immune response. Your body. That's when you hear people, my body rejected it, or your body rejected this organ or this transplant. That's host versus graft disease, and it kills off the transplant. So that was, it seemed to have first appeared in the mid-90s, cytokine storm. And then we see it appear more around 2000 as we start to get into the different flus, H1N1, the SARS, the MERS. We're starting to see the term cytokine storm show up in the literature. Of course, then what happens? The news outlets and media and stuff get this sexy term, cytokine storm, and now it's fucking everywhere. Everybody thinks they're a cytokine storm expert, including myself, which I'm not. But man, if you want clicks, if you want views, you just put cytokine storm and everyone's reading. So what is it? So it's a hyper response, basically, to an attack. In this case, it's a virus. Cytokine storm happens in several medical conditions, not always viruses. You can have it in pancreatitis, your organs can cause it. It ultimately results in something called sepsis. That's super important. We'll talk about that here in a second. But in this case, it appears a lot in viral illnesses. So H1N1, SARS, MERS, and now COVID-19. So I did that video that talked about how COVID-19 kills, and you can watch that if you haven't seen it. It's got 13 million views now, so it's super helpful. It's the whole sponge demonstration, how your lungs fill up with fluid. That's basically a result of a cytokine storm. So the coronavirus attacks your type 2 lung cells, your type 2 pneumocytes, destroys that cell. And when it destroys that cell, and how does it destroy the cell? Well, it gets into the cell, it makes copies of itself, and then it fucking pops through the cell. Remember that movie Aliens and the baby? Like the alien. And the baby comes out, the alien comes out, scared the shit out of all of us when we first saw that for the first time. Well, that's what happens to your type 2 pneumocytes. The coronavirus just pops out of that pneumocyte, just busts through the membrane and kills its host, kills that pneumocyte. And when that happens, your body signaling says, oh shit, we got a war. Oh yeah, boy, we're down now. Have you ever been in a bar fight and one of your buddies like gets picked on or gets hit, and now you got to jump in and got to start fighting? So that's what happened. The body alerts itself. So hey, hold on, wait a minute, something's happening down here. Sector 1B down here. There's a brawl going on. So it starts to release these cytokines that then call in backup. We're going to call in backup. The backup is macrophages who come and try to kill shit. The neutrophils are like, I'm going to, the neutrophils, your crazy friend who doesn't care who it hits. It's just going to fucking hit everybody with a bat. You know who I'm talking about? This guy, that guy. Ah! Okay, so that's like your killer cells and your neutrophils. They're like just whacking everybody. So what happens is if you call enough of these fuckers in there, they're going to like whack everybody. And that's what happens. Okay? So it starts killing a lot of cells. And then as things die, that forms fluid inside your alveolus, your actual breathing, your sac exchange. I said sac, I know, it's funny, sac exchange. And it fills up with fluid. And you have enough of those alveoli fill up with fluid, now you have pneumonia. Not only that, but remember what I said about when you cut your finger, paper cut, and it starts to throb and swell. That swelling is caused by fluid going into your tissues. That fluid gets into your tissues because your membranes become leaky, and you want it to get leaky so that can let the cavalry come in there and like rescue you. But what happens in your lungs is when you have the cytokine storm, it gets too leaky. So now you have all this fluid and plasma and stuff leak into your actual lung tissue. That's called the interstitial space. It's called interstitial space. And that makes your lungs get real stiff. And that leads to what I described in that video, ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome. And that's a lot like drowning in your own lung fluids. You can't move. You can't oxygen exchange. And that's ultimately what causes you to have the breathing tube. See, I told you I'd bring this shit back. And that's what's happening to mom or grandmom when your doctor says, we're worried she's going to tire out. We need to put a breathing tube in her throat to breathe for her. That's because of this early ARDS process. Okay? So, what happens in cytokine storm? Wait, there's more. There's more shit. So, it's not enough that they've screwed up your lungs and these guys are beating up everybody in your neighborhood. It's got to like go out to other neighborhoods. The mob is moving out to other neighborhoods and turning cars over and breaking buildings and all sorts of stuff. So these cytokines then get into your bloodstream and cause what's called a systemic, systemic response. That means it's organ-wide. So it travels to your entire body and starts causing this inflammatory process throughout your body. And that's called sepsis. Because sepsis means you can't get enough blood flow. Your body's not exchanging enough oxygen in your lungs. And so your end organs, like your end organs are the organs that require oxygen. So your heart is an end organ, your heart tissues, your kidney, your liver, etc. are starting to go into sepsis. And that's cytokine storm. That's mediated by the cytokine storm. The storm has gotten so big, the mob has gotten so big that it's starting to hurt other parts of your body, your other organs. Pay attention now. Because if this happens to your mom, because we're starting to see this now, that there's a very high percentage of patients who are in ARDS who then need to have dialysis. And so the doctor might call you and say, Mom is really sick, her kidneys are shutting down, we need to put her on a dialysis machine. Now I want you to understand your doctors are doing the best we can to support your mom, but this is necessary because the kidneys have shut down. And they've shut down as a result of not getting enough oxygen. There's a huge fluid imbalance. There's this huge inflammatory response. That's the cytokine storm you're hearing everyone talk about. So in essence, cytokines are good. They're a natural part of your body's immune response. But in this condition, in response to an overwhelming infection, it just overdoes it. It just goes crazy. And that's the storm. Which then leads us to the last point. Dr. Vuong, I get it. I got friends like those too. The bar friends who club everybody. We got friends like that. But why does that happen to some people and not to everybody? And the answer is this. We're not 100% sure why some people get cytokine storm and some don't. Some people have an appropriate response to the coronavirus and might have flu-like symptoms and get better. Some might have terrible, and comment if this is you. If you've had fever, terrible chest pain, like you're having trouble breathing, but you're okay, and you're like, boy, this is the worst flu I've ever had, but boy, I'm gasping for air, and then you got better. And it might have taken you 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, but you're looking back and you go, dude, that was the worst flu I've ever had. You probably had coronavirus. So why do some people have bad symptoms, and then why do some people need to be hospitalized but go home, versus some people who get hospitalized and end up in vents? That's the question I'm answering right now. So the answer is we don't really know, except we think it has something to do with genetics. So before you guys jump on the whole genetics train real quick, just let me explain. We don't know a lot, but we think there are phenotypes. So genotype is what your genome, your genes say. You have XYZ genomes. Phenotype is what's expressed, how you look. I have Asian genes. I have slanty eyes, olive colored skin, a buttery voice, smart math skills. No, not really. But that's the Asian phenotype, right? We all know it. I'm not being racist. I can say it. I'm an Asian. Fuck you. So we have genetics of cytokine receptors that say, okay, the cytokine is floating around. It sees a cell. The cell has a signal. I'll do it like this. The cell has a receptor, and the cytokine says, oh, that's the receptor I need, and causes this immune response. So then there are other genetic phenotypes. Maybe it's like this, and this cytokine says, oh, there's a cell receptor. Oh, you're not what I need. I don't bind with you. Then there's this other, I'll do it this way for my true fans who understand Dr. V. There's a cell floating around, right? There's a cell floating around, and it has this receptor that looks like this. And this coronavirus goes, oh, there's a cell receptor. Ooh, I like that one. Cytokine storm. It really blows up. So for whatever reason, due on your genetics, you might express and no, there's no way to tell. No, there's no test, there's no study, there's no way to tell how your body's going to respond. But you might have this genotype that has this expression that makes the cytokine go crazy and hyper respond. That's where we are at currently in genetics. That's all I can tell you. So this goes back to our final response. Stay the fuck home. Wash your hands. 6 feet from other people. You can get together. You can have people over. When they come over, make them wash their hands. Make them stay 6 feet away from you. You know? And when you're going out grocery shopping, you can go grocery shopping. Wipe down the cart, because that shit, coronavirus, stays on metal. That's called a fomite. Wipe it down. Use your little lotion. Stay 6 feet away from the guy in front of you in the cash register. Be patient. Give each other room in the aisles. Decent shit we should have been doing the whole fucking time, basically. And then when you go home, wash your hands, wipe down, and don't test it. Next, if you're a smoker, listen to me. If you're a smoker, you need to stop smoking, even right now. If you can stop smoking for 7 to 10 days, you've gained about 80 to 85% of the benefits of stopping smoking. You've given yourself a chance. So please, if you have a loved one who still smokes, I can't stop smoking. This is my only vice. This is my only vice. Mom, this is my only vice. Mom, I love you, but I want to see you survive this. My God damn it. What am I supposed to do? This is the only thing I've got left to live for is my cigarettes. Mom, listen, look, watch this skinny Asian. He's talking to you. He even sounds just like you, Mom. Ha! Ha! The hell he does. Ha! Ha! Did he just give me the finger? Ha! So if you will just stop smoking for 7 to 10 days till the end of April, to whenever this thing is lifted, and you have survived, like, you will get most of the benefits of stopping smoking. Nothing to do if you're old. You're just old. Blood pressure. Control your blood pressure. Don't get frustrated. Don't get anxious. Learn to meditate. That will calm you the fuck down. That will help. That will help your immune response. Don't watch the news, because that gets you worked up. In fact, we have studies that show if you watch comedies, funny things, and laughter will bring you down. That laughter will improve your immune system. So then I get other questions about, what about zinc and elderberry and fucking, there's no fucking data on it. Do it if it makes you feel better. If you want to take vitamin C, knock yourself out. If you want to take emergency, knock yourself out. And for the last fucking time, the pneumo vaccine does not help you. That's streptococcus, fucker. Taking the pneumo vaccine does not help you. Getting the flu shot this year did not help you. This is new virus. I love you. See, I said I was going to be calm. I said I was going to be different. I said this was a turning point. That's the last time I want to call you a fucker. Okay, so if this has been helpful, please share. I'm going to start interviewing other people, not only doctors, but celebrity guests, people doing good, business people, help us through this time, talk about the future of business. Like, maybe you might be stressed out because you're worried you're not going to have a job when this is done. We're going to talk about, I have a special guest. Hey, for those of you still watching, check this out. I have a special guest coming on Sunday. Who remembers Happy Days? Put a 1 in the comment section if you watched Happy Days growing up. Richie and Richie Cunningham. Put a 1 in the comment section if you watched Happy Days growing up. Well, this Sunday, I have a good friend of mine, Anson Williams, who, if you remember, played Potsy. Do you remember Potsy from Happy Days? Potsy is coming on with me live on Sunday to talk about coronavirus, how it's affected him, what he's doing for it, and what you can do for it, and projects he's working on, because we want to educate you, we want to entertain you, we want to help you through this time period. And I've got other special guests coming on. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great time, because you guys, my tribe, my following, if you're new to Dr. Vuong, I still love you. You guys heard the message. You guys shared the fuck out of my video. You guys said, this guy is speaking the truth. This guy's no bullshit. And now we get to calm the fuck down. And I love it. Okay? I love you guys. I love you for sharing. Thank you so much for sounding the alarm bell when we were just, I was like the only dude sounding the alarm bell. Everyone else was making fun of it. I was one of a few dudes. and now we've blunted the curve. Now we're looking better. The deaths are going to go way up. Trust me, it's going to be 80, 100,000 deaths, but it's getting better. So now we get to reap the reward. Don't take the foot off the gas pedal. We still have to do what got us there. We still have to wash our hands, keep isolated, etc. But now we're going to help you get back to work. We're going to help you stay entertained. We're going to help you pass the time and stay united as a fucking tribe.